Midnight Report.
Good evening and welcome to the very first episode of the Midnight Report. This is a podcast where we deep dive into true crime, unsolved mysteries, the paranormal, and some of your favorite urban legends. I'm your host, Mikey Stone. Today we're kicking off the series with one of the most fascinating cases that I've ever come across. I was doing lots of research trying to figure out which cases I want to cover for this first season, and I came across this one. Never heard of it before, but the more that I dived into it, the more research I did, the more documentaries I watched, the more my mind was blown. I've never heard of this one before, and I don't know, the theories in this case just blew my mind because there are so many different ways to connect everything together. Today, we're going to be talking about the mysterious YOG'TZE case. It's full of crazy details, unanswered questions, and tons of theories and speculation. And of course, I'll be sharing my own thoughts on what might have really happened. Before we jump in, I just want to say thank you so much for tuning in. Whether you're watching or listening, it means so much to me. If you enjoy this episode, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. It really helps me out and helps this channel grow. And if you want to support this podcast more directly, with perks like early access to episodes and exclusive content, please check out my Patreon. I'll have everything linked below in the description, or you can just search Mikey Stone in the Patreon. It helps me to keep creating the Midnight Report and my other shows for you guys. So I hope to see you over there. All right, without further ado, let's get into tonight's case. Tonight's case revolves around a man named Günther Stoll. Before his name became entangled in one of Germany's most bizarre and unsettling unsolved mysteries, Günther Stoll was simply Günther, a husband, a father, a son, a man whose life on the surface looked ordinary, quiet, and maybe even forgettable, until it wasn't. Günther Stoll was born in 1949 in the small village of Heigersilbach. Also, guys, this case takes place in Germany, so a lot of these names are in German. I'm going to butcher them, and I'm so sorry. But he was born in the small village of Heigersilbach, tucked away in the German state of Hesse, just 15 kilometers from where he would later live as an adult. Heigersilbach is the kind of place that barely shows up on a map, so it's a very small village in West Germany. It's a sleepy little village where life moves slow and very steady, and everyone knows everyone else's business. His mother still lived there even decades later in the same home with the same quiet surroundings. So this kind of just paints a picture of the kinds of, life people live there. It's a small, quaint community, very beautiful. I did look at pictures. So not much is publicly known about Günther's childhood. I did try to do a lot of digging on him, but there really wasn't much information. It was all very, I guess it was kept private, but I was just trying to figure out things like the kind of kid he was, what his dreams were, who his friends were. But we know that as he grew up, he pursued a respectable technical profession. He trained as a food technician and later became a food engineer. It's not the kind of flashy job that gets headlines, but it takes skill, education, and precision. So this takes a lot of brains. This is the kind of career for someone who is methodical, practical, and very grounded. Eventually, Günther settled down in Onshausen, a small village in North Rhine-Westphalia, Germany. Back then, the village had only over 1,000 residents, small enough that you'd see the same faces at the grocery store, the same cars parked outside, the same houses, day after day. It was the kind of place people go to build a quiet, steady life. There in Onshausen, Günther lived with his wife and their young daughter. Again, I could not find much information on them. His family, their names have never been publicly disclosed, likely to protect their privacy after everything that would later unfold. But they were there, his wife, his child, the center of his world. even as that world started to fall apart. Günther drove a blue 3-door Volkswagen Golf. It's practical, simple, nothing flashy, just like him. And I think this car was really a reflection of his personality. He was a modest man earning a modest living, humble guy. But in the weeks leading up to the end of his life, things weren't as ordinary as they seemed from the outside. His wife would later share that Günther had become different. Anxious, fearful, distracted, something was gnawing at him, weighing on his mind. And no matter how much she asked, no matter how much she tried to get him to talk, he either couldn't or wouldn't explain what was going on. All that was clear was that Günther was scared. Of what? Of who? That remains a question only he could have answered, and he never did. That's the part people often forget when they talk about the YOG'TZE mystery. Before the headlines, before the wild theories, before the unanswered questions, there was just Günther. A small town man, a husband, a father, quietly unraveling under the weight of fears he couldn't name. And as we now know, that fear was only the beginning. So let me walk you through exactly what happened that night. The timeline of one of the weirdest unsolved cases Germany has ever seen, and definitely one that I've ever heard of. It all started on the evening of October 25th, 1984. Günther Stoll was at home with his wife, sitting in their living room in Onshausen. Now, it was probably supposed to be a normal night, but suddenly everything changed. Out of nowhere, Günther stood up and exclaimed in German, "Now it becomes clear to me." Almost like he just had some big realization or a breakthrough, solved a puzzle in his head, something like that. Right after saying that, he gets a piece of paper and scribbles down 6 letters, YOGTZE. Some people think it was actually YO6TZE, but either way, it's never been deciphered, and we'll get into that later. But to this day, no one knows what it means. And then just as quickly as he wrote it, he crossed it out. Now, at that point, his wife had no idea what to think. I'm sure she was startled. But before she could really ask questions, Günther grabbed his car keys and left the house. He just booked it out the door. He was clearly panicked. Maybe agitated, maybe afraid. No one knows for sure, but this was definitely very strange and it all happened very fast. So he gets in his car and drives off. And where does he go? He ends up at a local bar in Wilnsdorf called Papillon. There, he orders a beer. But, and this is where things start to get even more strange, before he even finishes his drink, I think he had like 2 sips or something like that of his beer. He collapses to the floor. Witnesses at the bar say he wasn't even drunk. It wasn't that. It was more like he fainted or maybe had some kind of mental or physical episode. He even injured his face when he hit the floor. I couldn't really find too many details on his facial injuries during this, but apparently it was severe enough to be noted. But after a little while, he comes to, gets back on his feet, leaves the bar, and drives off again. If it were me at that bar, I would not be letting him drive. I'd be like, do you need the paramedics? Should we call 911? Do you have someone that can come get you? I definitely would not have let him leave. That's just me. So I think that was a little strange, but maybe this all just happened so fast. Maybe he literally just like came to, got up and just ran out the door before anybody could stop him. I'm not too sure. So now it's getting late, but Günther does not go home. Instead, he drives to the town of Hagersilbach to visit a woman he knew from his youth. Remember, this is the town that he grew up in. This person is a friend, maybe an old flame. We don't really know the nature of their relationship. Lots of details in this case are not super public. So when I was doing research for this case, I really had to dig and just use what was known, what was given from like police reports and stuff like that. So he goes to Hagersilbach, and when he gets there, he's clearly still distressed. He goes to this friend's house and he tells her that something's going to happen tonight. But when she pressed him for details, he refused to elaborate, kind of like what was going on with him and his wife. For weeks leading up to this incident, when his paranoia and delusions kind of started, he kept telling his wife that they, quote unquote, were out to get him, but he never elaborated on who they were. So, um, so he's there, and she actually cuts him off and she urges him to see a doctor, probably sensing that he's not in a good state of mind. But instead, he just leaves. And after that, well, for the next couple of hours, Gunther's whereabouts are a mystery. Between about 1 a.m. and 3 a.m., no one knows where he went or what he did. So this couple of hours, he's really unaccounted for. Some people believe he met up with those mysterious people he'd been so paranoid about, the ones that he was telling his wife about and things like that. Others think that he was driving around just aimlessly, maybe trying to clear his head. But whatever happened during that window, it all led up to what happened next. At around 3 a.m. along the A45 highway near Offhausen, two truck drivers are making their way down the road when they spot a small blue Volkswagen Golf crashed in a ditch along the side of the autobahn. And it's kind of, from the crime scene, you can kind of see that it's crashed in this ditch near a lot of like brush and shrubs, bushes, things like that. And the car looks rough. But that is not all they see. Near the car, they spot a man. He's wearing a white jacket, and his arm appears to be injured and bloody, and he's limping around near the crash site. But before they can get a good look at him or even talk to him, he vanishes into the night. To this day, that man has never been identified. So one of the truck drivers runs to the roadside emergency phone to call for help, while the other approaches the crashed car. This is where things get even more strange. And I know I keep saying that, but there are so many turns in this case. It's insane. So the truck driver, the second one, goes up to the car. Inside, he finds a severely injured Günther Stoll. He's in the passenger seat, severely injured, completely naked, and barely clinging to life. His injuries were brutal. One of his arms is reportedly so badly damaged that it was nearly amputated. I can only imagine that what that must have been like, the shock and the adrenaline that the truck driver must have felt. But even in the state that Günther was in, Günther manages to speak. And what he says only deepens the mystery. He tells the truck driver that there had been 4 men with him in the car earlier. He says that they weren't his friends and that he did not know them. Shortly after that, emergency services arrive. They load him into the ambulance and they rush him to the hospital. But unfortunately, Günther Stoll never makes it. He dies en route to the hospital. And that right there is where the mystery begins. When the police arrived and started investigating Günther Stoll's death, they were immediately baffled. Instead of clear answers, they found themselves with even more questions. The first big revelation was that Günther's injuries did not come from crashing his own car. Instead, evidence suggested that he had been hit by a different vehicle somewhere else, somewhere away from where his car was found. And then somehow he was placed back into the passenger seat of his Volkswagen Golf and driven to that crash site along the A45 highway. But the damage to the car itself, apparently that had happened right there where the truck drivers found it. Now, things got even stranger. I'm going to keep saying that. His car keys were found on the rear shelf inside the car, and his shoes were inside the driver's side floorboard. But Günther himself was found completely naked. What happened to his clothes? That still remains a mystery. His clothes were never found. Some think whoever was involved might have removed his clothing to destroy evidence, but no one knows for sure. I know this is the 80s, and I know that DNA evidence is not like it is today, but maybe if somebody did do something to him, maybe they were just thinking ahead. Adding to the confusion, there were reports of a hitchhiker seen near the area where the car was found. Drivers passing by had noticed this mysterious figure near the Hagen-Süd exit, but no one was ever able to find or identify the hitchhiker. And this lead went cold. Could this hitchhiker have seen something? Was this hitchhiker that guy from the accident that they had seen in the white jacket? Speaking of that guy in the white jacket, there was also him, the one spotted limping near the crash site, but he too disappeared without a trace. So was this hitchhiker that guy in the white jacket with the the injured arm, the bloody sleeve? Or was it truly just a random hitchhiker who could have seen something or was just there, happened to be there? We just don't know. When investigators started piecing together what little they could from the scene and the evidence, they came up with a few working theories. Now, I want to be clear. These aren't the wild public speculations or conspiracies that we'll get into later. Those are even crazier. These are a few more grounded possibilities that the police and official investigators have considered over the years. So these come with a little more evidence and a little more foundation, even though that these still don't really make any sense. The first is the foul play theory that Gunther Stoll was murdered. It sounds dramatic, but considering what he'd been telling people in the days before his death, that ominous talk about them being after him, it's not entirely unreasonable. Maybe it wasn't just paranoid delusions. Maybe there really were people who wanted him dead. According to this theory, those people attacked him, staged the scene to make it look like a car accident, and vanished. But even the investigators admit, if this was a murder staged to look like an accident, it doesn't explain one glaring detail. Why was he found completely naked? Honestly, that's my biggest question. Like, all of this is weird. Where are his clothes? That's the weirdest part to me. It's crazy that they never found them. The second possibility the police looked into was that it was simply an accident, possibly a hit and run. Maybe Gunther crashed his car into the side of the road, disoriented and injured. He could have gotten out, possibly looking for help, and ended up wandering onto the autobahn. Now the 845 highway, where all this took place, doesn't have a strict speed limit along most stretches. Drivers can easily be flying past at 80 miles per hour or more, and it's possible that someone hit him, maybe even those 4 men he mentioned, and out of fear of being blamed, they staged the scene. But again, even with this theory, the missing clothes don't make sense, especially because this was back in the early to mid 80s where DNA evidence, fingerprint evidence was not where it is today. So I think that that's very strange. Now, this next one may not be important, but I feel like it was important to mention that in the early days of the investigation, rumors swirled around about Gunther's previous travels to the Netherlands. Some suspected he might have gotten involved with drug dealers during those trips, but police found no evidence to support this theory. Now, the last theory that the police and investigators came up with, which is the most tragic theory that investigators considered, was that this was self-inflicted, that Gunther, in the grip of a mental health crisis or sheer panic, deliberately ran into traffic that night, intending to take his own life. But once again, we hit the same wall. Why was he naked? Where are his clothes? And how does that tie into the rest of the strange details from that night? So, as much as investigators tried to work through the evidence, every single theory still left them with unanswered questions. Not a single one of those theories truly explains what happened that night. Nothing adds up. However, fast forward to this year, 2025. After Gunther's death, the Hagen police released an update that threw a curveball into the case. On Thursday, April 3rd, 2025, police officially marked the case as solved. Their conclusion? That it was just a tragic accident. New forensic investigations showed that the injuries Gunther sustained likely didn't come from being run over in some staged crime, but instead, they much more likely resulted from a collision. They also confirmed that no foreign DNA was found in the car or even on Gunther's body, which strongly suggested that he was alone at the time of the accident. According to that, investigators expressed serious doubt about the old expert reports from back in the 1980s. Those reports, the ones that first raised suspicion of foul play, may not have been reliable after all. Based on all of that, the case, which had been treated as a possible murder for all of these years, was officially closed as a single car traffic accident with no evidence of outside interference. Now, I'm not sure I believe all that. I think some things still seriously just don't add up. I think the case would have been left just being unsolved, but that is the statement they came up with. That's the theory that they came up with, and they're sticking to that. But still, one of the most unsettling missing pieces of the puzzle was the note. The paper with the letters YOGTZE on it. The police never actually recovered this paper. Gunther's wife later admitted she threw it away on the night that he died. So no one could verify if that was really what he had written. The police have expressed doubt about whether the mysterious YOG'TZE note ever really existed, and even if it did, they didn't believe it had anything to do with how Gunther lost his life. And the meaning behind those 6 letters remains a complete mystery. So the official investigation gave us these updates, but naturally, this case has sparked plenty of alternative theories and speculation. Now that we've gone through the investigation and what the police concluded, let's dive into the public speculation and the theories that are a bit more intriguing. These are the ideas that have captured imaginations, sparked debate, and kept this case alive in the minds of mystery lovers all around the world. So let's get into these theories. Now, the official theories the police came up with, those left a lot of people unsatisfied, to say the least. Because let's be honest, this case is weird. It feels unfinished and rushed, and anytime there's a mystery, the public fills in the blanks with their own ideas, right? That's just what they're going to do. And over the years, the YOG'TZE case has sparked some truly bizarre and honestly fascinating public theories and conspiracies. So let's talk about them. Let's start with the one that might seem like one of the most obvious, at least to some, that Gunther suffered from schizophrenia. There's this belief that everything that happened, the paranoia, the cryptic note, the talk of people being after him, could all be explained by an undiagnosed mental illness, specifically schizophrenia. It fits the delusions, the paranoia, maybe even the disorganized thought process that led him to writing that strange note. If this theory holds any weight, it paints a tragic picture of a man spiraling deeper into mental illness until it all ended that night. But even that doesn't explain all the details. The 4 unknown men, the missing clothes, the injuries. So while some people lean towards this being a case of untreated mental illness, others aren't so sure. Then, of course, there's the theory that takes us beyond mental health and straight into international mystery, the Russian call sign theory. And before I go any further, just a heads up, these theories are insane and out there in my opinion, but so very interesting. So we're going to ping pong back and forth. So this theory is called the Russian call sign theory. Some people believe that YOGTZE wasn't just random letters, but actually a code, possibly a radio call sign linked to Russia. On April 12th, 1985, just a few months after Gunther had died, the case was presented on a popular German television program. Upon airing, several amateur radio enthusiasts called that TV station, stating that by changing the G in YOGTZE to the number 6, one gets the official call sign of a Romanian radio station. Now, considering that this all happened during the Cold War era, it fuels the speculation that Gunther may have stumbled onto something that he wasn't supposed to know. Maybe he intercepted a message or got mixed up with the wrong people. Is it far-fetched? Yeah, a little. But in this case, everything feels far-fetched. I literally feel like anything could be possible. One of my personal favorites is the upside-down numbers theory. Some people think that if you flip YOGTZE around, rearrange it a little, it could actually be a set of coordinates. And get this, supposedly those coordinates point to 2 locations, one being a small island in Hawaii, and the second being an isolated area deep in the Arctic. Now, is there really any proof of this? No, but it has not stopped the internet sleuths and conspiracy theorists from running wild with the idea. I mean, it's very interesting, but what would Gunther, a German food engineer, have to do with remote islands and frozen wastelands? Who knows? But hey, it makes for a good mystery. I tried to dive deeper into that one, but there really wasn't much to go off of. I did go down the Reddit rabbit hole. I just couldn't find much. If anyone out there knows more about that theory, I'd love to hear in the comments. Speaking again about his health, another public theory ties into a possible brain tumor. Some believe that the strange behavior, like the paranoia, even the note, all of it could be explained by an undetected tumor affecting his cognitive function. There are cases where tumors cause drastic personality changes, hallucinations, even paranoia, basically making a person feel like they're losing touch with reality. It's a sad theory, but one that could tie the whole case together. If, of course, there was ever medical evidence to support it. I've heard of people having brain tumors like, fainting, passing out, losing consciousness. So, for him to be in that bar. So remember, he was at that bar, Papillon in Willensdorf, and he had ordered that beer, sat down, had 2 sips of it, and literally fell over, passed out, fell over. And everyone in the bar just said that he literally just took a sip and over he went. So maybe it is possible that it could have just been something like a brain tumor or a problem with his brain. Could even be stroke-like. I don't know. I think that maybe there being a medical explanation is a huge possibility. But again, there's just no evidence of it. I still think I tend to lean more towards that he was either having a mental illness crisis or that there was a medical problem. Next up, there is the license plate theory, and this one is very interesting as well. Some people believe that YOG'TZE might actually resemble a 6-digit European license plate number. Maybe Gunther saw a car with that plate, and maybe it meant something to him, or maybe, just maybe, it belonged to the people he thought were after him. And what makes this one extra strange is how German license plates are laid out. So they always start with 1 to 3 letters that indicate the city or district where the car was registered. For example, plates starting with M belong to cars registered in Munich. And if it starts with B, that's Berlin. But here's where it gets interesting. License plates that start with the letter Y are reserved for government official vehicles only. I'm not sure if that's still the case, but that was back in 1984. Now, no one has ever been able to trace a specific government vehicle with the license plate YOGTZE or even confirm for sure that this combination was ever on a car, but the connection raises eyebrows, especially when you link it back to that Russian call sign theory. If Gunther stumbled onto something he wasn't supposed to, maybe involving government operations or intercepted messages, it suddenly makes the idea of a government vehicle with that plate number feel a little less far-fetched. Maybe he was being watched. Maybe he figured out that he was being watched. That would definitely make me paranoid. The problem is, to this day, no one has been able to connect those letters to an actual registered vehicle. But hey, it keeps the theory alive. And finally, we've got the one that ties directly into Gunther's job. Remember, he was a food engineer, and that's fueled the YOG'TZE food theory. Some say that YOG could stand for yogurt, while TZE might refer to some sort of artificial flavoring or chemical additive used in food production. We do know that the TZE is an abbreviation for some sort of artificial flavoring chemical additive, so that's very interesting. But now imagine this. Maybe Gunther discovered something dangerous, unethical, or illegal happening in the food industry. Maybe he knew too much. Maybe he tried to warn people. It's a total whistleblower theory, like something straight out of a movie. With how bizarre this whole case is, people can't help but wonder if there's truth buried somewhere in that. I see where people are leaning. Like it sounds so wild and out there, but it's kind of crazy how people have connected all of these different things to these different theories, especially with the letters on the note. But again, we don't even really know what the note said, if the note even existed. I dug so deep, you guys, to try to figure out how we know that that's what the note said, if it was just like word of mouth from the wife, like, if it was significant enough, like, or wasn't even significant enough, like, why would she mention it, right? So I think that that's very interesting. And also, I think that there's a possibility that it might not even be that deep, that maybe this is just a man struggling with mental health problems, a man in a mental health crisis who had a breakdown and got in a horrible car accident and just ended up dying. Of course, it's fun to think about the theories, but just nothing really adds up. Even the police theories, it's so hard. Like, where are his clothes? Why were his keys in the back of his car? Why were his shoes placed in the floorboard? On the driver's side, I get if you're in a car accident, things can like be thrown around, but like it just seemed too perfect. If it was a car accident, I don't understand why he was naked. Just nothing makes sense. I've been racking my brain about this case for like a month, and I can't figure out a theory that works for me. So if you guys have a theory that you think fits better, please let me know in the comments below. I need to know what you guys think. So after all of that, what can we really say about the YOG'TZE case? It's a puzzle filled with strange clues, a cryptic note, mysterious injuries, unknown men, and bizarre circumstances that just don't add up. The official investigation explored everything from murder to accident to self-harm, but even with decades of work, no theory fully explains what happened that night. The public's imagination has only added to the mystery, spinning theories from mental illness to brain tumors to secret government codes and possible whistleblowing tied to Gunther's work. I mean, it's stretched. So after all of that, what can we really say about the YOG'TZE case? It's a puzzle filled with strange clues, a cryptic note, mysterious injuries, people who just disappear, and bizarre circumstances that just don't add up. The official investigation explored everything from murder to accident to self-harm, but even with decades of work, no theory fully explains what happened that night. The public's imagination has only added to the mystery, spinning theories from mental illness, brain tumors to secret government codes and possible whistleblowing tied to Gunther's work. And while some of these ideas might seem far-fetched, they show just how deeply this case has captured people's attention. Because at its heart, it's about a man, a husband and father who experienced symptoms of severe paranoia and mysteriously obtained traumatic and fatal bodily injury in darkness on the autobahn, under circumstances that still defy easy explanation. In the end, the case remains one of Germany's most baffling unsolved mysteries. A story that reminds us how sometimes, even with all of the bells and whistles of investigation and speculation, some secrets just won't come to light. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. This case definitely makes my head spin. It's been spinning for about a month now. I don't think I'll ever be over this case. It's just so interesting to me. And I'm sure I'm not the only one still wondering what really happened that October night in 1984. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to tune in every Wednesday for more creepy, unsettling stories, mysteries, and unsolved cases. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe. It really helps me out more than you know and helps the show keep going, helps the show grow. And if you want to support the podcast more directly, you can join my Patreon under Mikey Stone. You'll get early access to episodes, bonus content, and other cool perks. Also, let me know down in the comments below what unexplained mystery you would like me to cover next. Alright, you guys, I will see y'all next time. Good night!